The night I finally achieved the promotion I'd spent 9 years working toward, I reserved a private room to celebrate with the people I loved most. Every single one of them promised they'd be there. I waited for hours, but no one came. Later that night, I discovered they had all chosen my younger brother's party instead. I thought the worst part was being forgotten. I was wrong. What I uncovered over the following weeks changed the way I looked at my family forever. And it all began with one promotion they believed didn't matter. My name is Ethan and I'm 36 years old. 3 months ago, I received the promotion I had spent nearly 9 years working toward. It wasn't the kind of promotion that instantly changes your life, but it was the one that proved every late night, every canceled vacation, and every weekend spent answering emails instead of relaxing had finally meant something. I became director of operations for one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in Chicago. The salary increase was impressive, but that wasn't what mattered most to me. For the first time since I started my career, I felt respected. People often assume promotions happen because someone notices your talent. That's not how it worked for me. My career was built on saying yes when everyone else said no. I volunteered for projects nobody wanted. I fixed mistakes that weren't mine. I covered shifts during holidays because someone always had a family emergency. I spent years quietly solving problems while other people collected recognition. I wasn't the loudest employee. I was simply the one everyone depended on. When HR called me into the executive conference room that Monday morning, I expected another discussion about quarterly targets. Instead, our CEO smiled, slid a folder across the table and said, "Congratulations. You earned this." Those 3 words stayed with me the entire drive home. You earned this. Nobody had ever said that to me before. Not at work. Not at home. Especially not at home. Growing up, my younger brother Ryan had always been the center of attention. Ryan was charming, outgoing, and naturally good at making people laugh. Teachers loved him. Neighbors remembered his name. My parents called him our little superstar. I wasn't jealous. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I was simply invisible. If Ryan scored a goal during a soccer game, everyone celebrated. If I brought home perfect grades, my parents would smile and ask if I could help Ryan study because school just isn't his thing. When Ryan dropped out of college to pursue different business ideas every 6 months, everyone admired his courage. When I accepted my first entry-level office job, my father shrugged and said, "Well, somebody has to work behind a desk." Over the years, I convinced myself that none of it mattered. Success would eventually speak for itself. After receiving my promotion, I wanted to believe that day had finally arrived. So I planned a dinner. Nothing extravagant. Just a private room at a well-known steakhouse downtown. My parents Ryan, my older cousin Melissa, my Aunt Carol, my Uncle David, and 2 close family friends. 8 people. The people I thought would be happy to celebrate with me. I sent the invitations 2 weeks in advance. Every single person confirmed. My mother even texted, "We're so proud of you. Wouldn't miss it for anything." Reading those words made me smile. I should have known better. The dinner was scheduled for Friday evening at 7. I arrived at 6:30. The restaurant overlooked the river, and the city lights reflected beautifully across the water. The manager congratulated me when I checked in. "Big celebration tonight?" "Hopefully," I answered. He showed me into the private dining room. Everything looked perfect. 8 place settings. Fresh flowers. My favorite bottle of Cabernet waiting on ice. For the first 15 minutes, I kept checking my phone. Traffic happens. People run late. 7 became 7:15. 7:30. 7:45. The waitress politely asked if she should begin serving appetizers. Give them another 10 minutes. She smiled sympathetically. By 8 o'clock, I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. I called my father. No answer. Ryan declined the call immediately. That felt strange. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a notification from Instagram. Ryan had gone live. Curious, I opened it. There he was, standing inside a newly opened nightclub across town, surrounded by flashing lights, expensive bottles, and at least 20 people cheering around him. Someone shouted, "To Ryan's new business." Everyone raised their glasses. My parents stood right beside him. My mother was laughing. My father had his arm around Ryan's shoulder. The caption read, "Family always supports your dreams." I stared at the screen. There wasn't even a hint that anyone remembered my dinner. I refreshed the page. More photos appeared. Group selfies. Champagne. A custom cake with Ryan's company logo. Apparently, he had decided to launch another startup, this time an event marketing agency. No one had bothered telling me. No one had remembered they had promised to be somewhere else first. The waitress quietly walked into the room. "I'm so sorry," she said gently. "Would you like me to package everything?" I looked around the empty table. 8 untouched chairs. 8 folded napkins. 8 glasses that nobody would use. "Yes," I answered. "Please pack it all." She nodded without asking another question. Sometimes silence is kinder than sympathy. I paid the bill, thanked the staff for their professionalism, and carried several boxes of untouched food to my car. On the drive home, I kept replaying one question. Was tonight really about Ryan? Or had my family simply shown me exactly where I stood? By the time I reached my apartment, my phone finally rang. It was my mother. I watched it vibrate until the screen went dark. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel disappointed. I felt finished. I didn't answer my mother's call that night. Then came another. And another. By midnight, I had 23 missed calls and a dozen text messages. "Mom. Honey, please call us. There's been a misunderstanding." "Dad. Don't overreact. Ryan needed us tonight." "Ryan. Bro, you're seriously upset over dinner?" That last message made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it perfectly summarized my role in the family. To them, it was never my promotion. It was just dinner. The next morning, I went for my usual 6-mile run before sunrise. Running had always been my way of clearing my head. Normally, I'd spend the first mile thinking about work, the second planning meetings, and the rest solving problems in my head. This time, I couldn't stop replaying the last 10 years. Every emergency loan. Every favor. Every sacrifice. When my parents struggled after my father retired earlier than expected, I quietly started covering their property taxes. Not once. Every year. They never asked. I simply noticed the overdue notices sitting on the kitchen counter during one visit and decided to help. When Ryan's first business collapsed, I loaned him $12,000. He promised to repay me within 6 months. That had been almost 4 years ago. I never saw a dollar. When his second business failed, I paid off several of his suppliers because I didn't want local companies losing money over his poor decisions. My parents called me generous. Ryan called me supportive. Neither ever mentioned paying me back. At the time, I convinced myself that family wasn't about keeping score. Now I wondered whether everyone else had been keeping score all along, and I had simply been losing. Monday morning, I walked into the office expecting another busy week. Instead, I found balloons tied to my office chair. My team had decorated the room while I was away. Someone had ordered breakfast. Another employee had printed a large banner. "Congratulations, Director Morgan." Nearly 30 people applauded when I entered. I was genuinely speechless. Lisa, my executive assistant, smiled. "We figured your family probably celebrated all weekend." For a moment, I almost told her the truth. Instead, I smiled back. "They're very proud." The lie tasted bitter. But I wasn't ready to explain. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my cousin Melissa. "Ethan, can we talk?" I stepped outside the building. "Sure." She hesitated. "I wasn't at Ryan's party." I noticed. "I only found out yesterday that everyone skipped your dinner." That caught my attention. "What do you mean?" "I thought the dinner had been canceled." I frowned. "Canceled? Ryan told me you postponed it because you had to stay late at work." For several seconds I couldn't speak. "So, you never received my message?" "I received your invitation." Then Ryan texted Thursday night saying plans changed. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Recognition. This hadn't been an accident. Someone had deliberately made sure people wouldn't show up. Who else did he tell? I don't know. After hanging up, I opened our family group chat. Everything looked normal. No cancellation. No updates. Then I noticed something strange. Melissa wasn't even in the group anymore. Neither was Aunt Carol. Ryan had created another group chat without me months earlier. I only realized because Melissa accidentally mentioned replying there. I wasn't just being ignored. I had been excluded. That evening I finally answered my mother's call. "Ethan," she said immediately. "Thank goodness. I have one question." "Of course. Who decided not to come Friday?" Silence. Then she sighed. "Ryan asked if we could stop by his launch first. So you chose him." "It wasn't like that." "Then explain." "He said your dinner would still be there afterward. My reservation ended at 9. We thought we'd make it. You never even called." Another pause. Finally she said quietly, "Ryan said you understood." I closed my eyes. "He told you that?" "Yes. I never spoke to Ryan." Silence. Longer this time. "I didn't know." For the first time, I heard uncertainty in her voice. Not guilt. Not yet. Just confusion. "Mom," I said calmly, "did you know Ryan told Melissa my dinner was canceled?" "What?" "He lied." "I don't believe that. I have no reason to invent it." "I'll talk to him." "Please do." I ended the call before she could say anything else. The following Wednesday, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked on the office door. "There's someone here asking for you." "Who?" "Your brother." Of course. Ryan walked in wearing designer sneakers, expensive sunglasses resting on his head, and the same effortless confidence he'd carried his entire life. He smiled like nothing had happened. "There he is. What are you doing here?" "Came to congratulate the big boss. You had 3 months." He laughed. "Still holding a grudge?" I folded my arms. "What do you want?" He looked around my office. "Nice place." Then he lowered his voice. "So, I need a favor." There it was. The real reason. "My investors are asking for proof that we've secured a logistics partner. And your company would be perfect." I stared at him. "You skipped my promotion dinner." "It wasn't personal. You lied to our family." He rolled his eyes. "Dude, you're making this way bigger than it is." "No." I stood. For the first time, I'm seeing it exactly as big as it actually is. His smile disappeared. "I just need a letter saying your company is considering working with us." "A false letter?" "It isn't false if you're considering it." "I'm not." He leaned closer. "Come on, Ethan." "No. This could change everything for my business. So could honesty." His expression hardened. "You've changed." I nodded. "I think I finally have." Without another word, I walked to the office door and held it open. He stood there for several seconds. Then he shook his head. "You know, Mom was right." "About what?" "Your job made you selfish." I smiled politely. "No, Ryan. My job taught me the value of people who actually show up." He left without looking back. As the elevator doors closed behind him, I realized something unexpected. For years, saying no had terrified me. This time felt like freedom. Ryan's visit should have been the end of it. He asked for a favor. I said no. Any reasonable person would have accepted the answer and moved on. Ryan had never been a reasonable person. 2 days later, my phone started buzzing before I even got out of bed. One notification, then another, then 20 more. First, I assumed something had happened at work. Instead, I found dozens of messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. "Aunt Carol, I can't believe you're treating your brother like this." "Uncle David, money really changed you." Second cousin Ashley, "Family should always come first." None of them asked what had happened. They had already decided. Ryan had told them his version first. I ignored every message and drove to the office. Around noon, Lisa walked into my office looking uncomfortable. "Ethan, what's wrong? I think you should see this." She placed her tablet on my desk. Ryan had uploaded a video to LinkedIn. It wasn't dramatic. It was calculated. He never mentioned my name directly. Instead, he talked about how successful people sometimes forget the people who believed in them. He described a businessman who refused to help his own family because he cared more about his corporate title than the people who raised him. Thousands of people viewed it. Hundreds commented. That's heartbreaking. Money changes everyone. Family deserves better. Most viewers assumed the story was true. They had no reason not to. Fortunately, neither did the people who actually mattered. My CEO stopped by that afternoon. I saw the post. I sighed. I'm sorry. He smiled. For what? My family bringing drama into the company. He laughed. Ethan, we've worked together for 8 years. I know exactly who you are. That simple sentence carried more weight than he probably realized. Because for years I had been trying to convince my own family of something my coworkers already knew. Integrity isn't something you claim. It's something people experience. 3 days later, HR informed me that someone had called the company asking questions about my position. Anonymous. The caller wanted to know whether I had abused company authority to benefit relatives. Fortunately, the request was immediately reported. My company had strict procedures. Every business partnership required approval from legal, procurement, and finance. No single executive, not even me, could approve one alone. The accusation made no sense, but it confirmed something important. Ryan wasn't simply angry. He was desperate. That Friday evening, my mother called again. This time I answered. Her voice sounded exhausted. Can we meet? What changed? I finally talked to Ryan. And he admitted. Some things. Some. He said he told people your dinner had been canceled. I stayed quiet. He said he didn't think it mattered because everyone wanted to see his launch first. There it was. The truth. Not hidden anymore. Not denied. He also admitted asking you for business. Yes. And you refused. I did. She sighed. He said you embarrassed him. I couldn't help smiling. No, Mom. He embarrassed himself. Another long silence followed. Finally she asked, were we really that unfair to you? It was the first honest question she'd asked in years. I don't think you noticed. What do you mean? You never planned to hurt me. So what happened? You kept rewarding the loudest person in the room and ignored the quiet one. She started crying. Not loudly. Just quietly enough that I almost didn't hear it. I never wanted you to feel invisible. I know. Then why didn't you ever tell us? Because every time I tried, someone said I was overreacting. She didn't argue. Because she couldn't. The following Sunday she asked if we could meet for coffee. Just the two of us. No Dad. No Ryan. I agreed. She looked older than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. As though the last week had forced her to see something she'd spent years avoiding. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. I went through old photo albums yesterday. I waited. There are hundreds of pictures of Ryan. She looked up. I counted. And you appear in 23. I didn't answer. I didn't realize. I know. There aren't even photos from your college graduation. No. We missed it because Ryan had a regional soccer tournament that weekend. You did. I honestly forgot. I remember. Tears filled her eyes again. I've been trying to remember every important moment in your life. And there are too many that I can't. For the first time I wasn't angry. I was sad. Not for myself. For her. Because she had finally realized that favoritism doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in thousands of tiny decisions. Each one seems harmless. Until one day your child grows up believing they only matter when they're solving someone else's problems. Before leaving, she reached across the table. I don't expect forgiveness. I appreciate that. But I hope, someday, we can start over. I looked out the cafe window. People hurried past carrying groceries, laughing with friends, living ordinary lives. I don't think we can start over. Her face fell. But she looked back at me. I think we can start being honest. For the first time in years. Neither of us pretended everything was okay. And somehow that felt like the first real conversation we'd ever had. After meeting my mother, I expected things to quiet down. Instead, they became even more complicated. Not because of my parents. Because of Ryan. 2 weeks later, I received an email from our company's legal department asking me to join an urgent meeting. When I walked into the conference room, Our general counsel slid a printed document across the table. Have you ever seen this before? I looked down. At the top was my company's logo. Beneath it was a letter stating that we intended to enter a strategic partnership with Ryan's marketing agency. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. It wasn't. Someone had forged it. I've never signed this, I said immediately. We know. Where did it come from? One of Ryan's investors contacted us this morning to verify the agreement before releasing additional funding. I leaned back in my chair. For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan hadn't just exaggerated. He had fabricated an official company document. Our legal team quickly confirmed that the letterhead had been copied from a public PDF on our website. My signature had been scanned from an old conference program, and several details were completely inaccurate. Fortunately, the investors had verified everything before transferring any money. Otherwise, the situation could have become much worse. Our attorney looked at me. Do you want to file a police report? I didn't answer right away. Not because I wanted to protect Ryan. Because I couldn't understand how someone could make so many bad decisions without stopping to think about the consequences. I'll speak to him first, I finally said. But if he refuses to admit what he did, I won't stand in the way. That evening I drove to my parents' house. Ryan's car was parked outside. When he opened the front door, he looked surprised to see me. What are you doing here? I know about the letter. His face changed instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled a copy from my folder and handed it to him. He stared at it for several seconds before looking away. It wasn't supposed to go this far. So you admit it. I just needed investors to believe the partnership was close. You forged my signature. I was going to tell them later. No. I shook my head. You were hoping nobody would ever ask. My father walked into the hallway after hearing our voices. What's going on? I handed him the document. He read the first page. Then the second. His shoulders slowly dropped. Ryan. It isn't what it looks like. It looks like fraud. I was desperate. Dad closed the folder. You forged your brother's name. Ryan looked toward our mother, hoping she would defend him. She didn't. Instead, she quietly asked one question. Did Ethan refuse to help you? Yes. So you decided to steal his reputation? Ryan didn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer. Only excuses. For the first time in my life, nobody rushed to protect him. Nobody blamed circumstances. Nobody blamed me. The silence in that room felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Finally, Dad spoke. You need a lawyer. Ryan nodded slowly. I know. Over the following weeks, everything happened faster than I expected. Ryan's investors withdrew. His agency closed before completing a single major project. The police investigation confirmed the forged document, but because no money had actually changed hands and everyone cooperated, prosecutors agreed to resolve the matter through restitution, financial penalties, and probation instead of prison. It was still enough to destroy his professional credibility. No one wanted to hire someone who had forged corporate documents. I felt sorry for him, not because of what happened, because he had spent his entire life believing shortcuts were easier than earning trust. Eventually, every shortcut runs out. 3 months later, my company held its annual leadership conference. Executives from every regional office attended. Near the end of the evening, the CEO stepped onto the stage. I'd like to recognize someone. I assumed he was talking about another department. Instead, he looked directly at me. Ethan Morgan has spent nearly a decade building something that's difficult to measure. He paused. Trust. The room applauded. He continued. Skills can be taught. Experience comes with time. But integrity is earned every single day. I stood and accepted the award. As cameras flashed, I remembered sitting alone in that restaurant months earlier, staring at 8 empty chairs. Back then, I thought success meant finally receiving my family's approval. Now I understood something much more important. Approval and respect are not the same thing. Approval depends on whether people like your choices. Respect depends on whether you stay true to your principles. One can disappear overnight. The other stays with you for life. A year later, my parents invited me to dinner. Just the 3 of us. No celebration. No speeches. No pretending the past hadn't happened. Dinner was simple. Homemade lasagna, fresh bread, quiet conversation. Halfway through the meal, my father set down his fork. "I owe you an apology." I looked at him. I spent years believing I was treating both my sons equally. He shook his head. "I wasn't." My mother reached for my hand. "We can't change what we did." "I know. But we'd like the chance to do better." For the first time, I believed they meant it. Not because of their words. Because over the previous year, their actions had finally matched them. Ryan wasn't there. He had moved to another state to start over. We spoke occasionally. Our relationship was polite but distant. Some bridges can be repaired. Others become reminders of where not to build again. As for me, I kept the promotion. I kept growing my career. I bought a small house outside the city, adopted a rescue dog named Cooper, and slowly built a life that didn't depend on anyone else's validation. Looking back, I no longer considered the empty dinner the worst night of my life. Ironically, it was the night everything finally became clear. Sometimes the greatest promotion isn't the title on your office door. It's realizing your worth was never determined by the people who failed to see it. And once you understand that, you stop chasing recognition. You start choosing peace.